Good evening and welcome to the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners meetings for Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. We have two committee meetings on the agenda tonight. We have a Grants and Community Development Committee and we have a Building and Planning Committee meeting. We will start this evening with the Grants and Community Development Committee, and I recognize its chair, Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, President Simon. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here this evening and for chiming in online. We have one agenda item this evening on our Grants and Community Development Committee meeting, and this is a public hearing. And the way this process works every year is we have two hearings followed by the passage of an annual plan that is submitted to the to HUD, a part of the federal government. And this will be a chance for us to review the preliminary work of the economic development staff and the Division of Community Development. And from there, we'll hear comments and read one that we received online for commissioner comments, and then we'll close the hearing. So Emily, if you wouldn't mind, Ms. Crane coming to the podium and giving an overview of how the 24 plan differs from the 23 plan.
Sorry. Thank you to Commissioner O'Neill.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everybody. As Commissioner O'Neill noted, this is the first of two public hearings that are required by HUD. As part of the process of developing our annual action plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program, excuse me. And the purpose of this hearing is for the commissioners to receive public comment on the community needs prior to beginning the process of considering applications and developing the action plan. The second hearing, as you mentioned, also will be held in April. At that time, all of the grant applications will have been received and reviewed by staff and the Grants Committee. And the board will be presented with the draft budget for the 2023-2024 fund year. There'll be another meeting in May, at which the board will be asked to approve the final budget in time to send the action plan to HUD as required by the 15th of May. We do not yet know from HUD what the actual grant amount will be this year, but we typically receive about $1 million, which we spend over 5 categories, which are administration, rehabilitation, public services, public works, and economic development. Because we don't know, we don't really know how it's going to differ this year from next, and we don't have the applications in yet, but we will soon. So the 5 categories, just as a brief description, are the first is administration, which every year covers staff salaries, consultant fees, and some administration for the Housing Equality Center of Pennsylvania, which is a fair housing organization, and we are required by HUD to further fair housing in our community as a CDBG recipient. Then depending on the year and the applications that come in, the admin money can also be spent to support different organizations with planning studies, but that depends on what comes in, and we don't yet know what will come in. There's a 20% cap on the admin spending, which we almost never have a problem with, and the only reason we would is if there are multiple planning study applications in the same year. The second project or category is rehabilitation, and there's several projects under that. The first is the homeowner occupied rehabilitation program, which assists low to moderate income homeowners to make necessary repairs to their home and therefore be able to stay in their homes. Another program is the home purchase program, and that's where we buy one house a year, more or less, and make the necessary repairs to that house and then resell it. We do that in partnership with Lower Merion Affordable Housing. Then we rehab the house as needed and resell it to a low to moderate income first-time home buyer. And again, depending on the year and the applications, that money can also support rehabilitation projects for organizations as long as they are eligible under the HUD regulations. Third category is public services, which is typically spent on ADA curb cuts, and as I think you know also in this one, did I just say public services is ADA curb cuts? No. Public services obviously supports public services, and I think we all know that this is the hardest one to give the money out because we have a 15% cap. Only 15% of the total grant can be spent on these organizations. have amazing people doing all kinds of work in the community, and we're very limited on what we can give out in that category, so that's always hard. Fourth one is Public Works. That's the ADA curb cuts. We do have curb cuts in all intersections in the township already, but we have been going through over the years a couple intersections at a time and bringing them up to the current standards. And the last category is economic development. We have 2 programs under that. One is the facade program to help business owners make repairs to facades if they have some sort of code violation. And the second program is a job creation program, which is actually just in Ardmore, and that's administered through the Ardmore initiative. So that is a general breakdown of how we spend the money. How it differs from last year will depend on the money we get and the applications that come in. And that leads us up to the public hearing portion, so we'll receive comment from the public on these projects and others that you think maybe should be.
Thank you so much. So if it's okay with my colleagues, I'd like to open it up to public comment first to hear, because really the purpose of the hearing is to hear from everybody except us. But I do want everybody to have that opportunity. So why don't we get started with members of the public? Anyone who would like to come up, please do.
Laura Gillen, Haverford. I have a comment and a question. I heard a wonderful term today, and I really want you all to embrace it. NOAH. N-O-A-H. This was from a developer who's maybe interested in developing in our community, and he talked about naturally occurring affordable housing, which I think is just wonderful. And I think there are pockets for gentle density in our community where we can allow moderate income families to live. So I'm very excited about that and want to encourage you to look at those opportunities and maybe where some CDBG funds could use it, could be invested. The other question I had, and I don't know if this is something that you all have, but we just in January had the homeless count, and I think it included the unsheltered street count. I would love to know if there were any unsheltered here in Lower Merion. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, yes, Commissioner, oh, yes, and then we'll swing back. We have some information there for you from today's data. Hi.
Hi, I'm Nancy Scarlato. I'm the Executive Director of Ardmore Initiative, and I'm here tonight to ask for your support of our application for CDBG funds. Ardmore Initiative first applied for CDBG funding through Lower Merion Township in 2011, and we created a business assistance grant program, pilot program to assist new businesses with startup costs or rehabilitation costs. The primary objective was to create jobs for low to moderate income people. Ardmore Initiative, Lower Merion Township, and HUD worked together to draft these program guidelines and determine eligible criteria. And because this was designed to support our business recruitment efforts, only new or expanding retail businesses or restaurants could be eligible for funding. Applicants in our program are scored by a committee which includes our board members, Lower Merion Township staff, local business owners on things like criteria including location, soundness of and feasibility of business plan, uniqueness, and contribution to an improved business mix. The program has been a success for the past 12 years in terms of providing assistance to new businesses in the Ardmore Business District. Tired Hands and Delice Chocolat are just 2 examples of recipients that have brought vitality and, importantly, jobs to the downtown. In 2021, we shifted the focus to job retention. Our most recent award was to Marion Art, a business that's been in Ardmore for over 50 years and employs over 17 individuals who are able to keep their job because of the support from this grant. As I mentioned, Ardmore Initiative and Lower Merion Township's original goal for this program was job creation, and in that regard, it's been a success, creating and now retaining over 140 full and part-time jobs for low to moderate income families. The enthusiasm, energy, and creativity that these businesses bring to our downtown is the real value of this program, and we look forward to continuing this relationship with our partners, Lower Merion Township. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Anthony Johnson, the new Executive Director at Eldernet. And Eldernet is the agency that provides those lifeline services to township residents, including a food pantry and emergency fund assistance. The township helps us through CDBG funding with 2 programs, our escort driver program and also our social worker program. So the social worker program has been really well used. We have 2 full-time social workers. One is a licensed clinical social worker, and the participants, as we call them, or clients, have been coming in just asking for all kinds of help with applications for the rent rebate was really popular, but also LIHEAP and SNAP and all that. So the funding is really important to help us keep those services going. And then the other one is the escort driver program. So when someone isn't able to use one of our volunteer drivers to go to a medical appointment or shopping, we use Maxwell Taxi, which is a township-based business, to provide those rides. And just to give you a number to focus on, so we had a resident recently go from Ardmore House to a medical appointment at Penn at Radnor, right past the Blue Route entrance, and then the round trip. That was $57 just for that one. So we get $1,500 in CDBG funding for the escort driver program. And for the fiscal year, we've already gone through 1,100 of it. So we have about 400 left to get us through the end of June. And as you can imagine, again, with those round trip rates, we're going to really have to, maximize it. So again, just please keep us in mind as you distribute or allocate the CDBG funding. And thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other public comments? I don't see any in person. Are there any online?
I do have one online, Adrienne Seltzer, and I'm going to put her in now.
Sure.
She's on screen.
Okay.
So you're ready.
Oh, there it goes. All right. Hello, Commissioners.
Hi, Ms. Seltzer.
Adrienne Seltzer, Wynwood.
Go ahead, Ms. Seltzer.
Okay.
You
Is
muted.
it okay?
Yeah, Wemo, we can't hear you. Adrian, hold on. 1 moment.
Wait a minute. I'm going to my audio settings.
You know
Input.
what's weird? It was showing my screen up there, and it should be showing your screen.
I think as we work out the technical difficulty, I will go ahead and read a letter that was submitted to the board from Abby Lerner. This is in support of the CDBG grant program. Hi, would love to submit comments for the meeting on February 8th, as I will not be able to attend in person. With regards to the Community Development Block Grant, I would like to voice my support for funds being used specifically to increase sidewalks and walkability and bike lanes throughout the township, but especially near schools. Students and residents alike will benefit from a more walkable Lower Merion, and our taxes will be invested in our community for years and years to come. The physical health, mental health, and environmental benefits of walking are undeniable. After having experienced how detrimental it is to be separated from our neighbors after the last few years, this would be the best use of funds. Thank you for consideration. Abby Rubin of Ballackinwood. So that is the only letter that we received in advance of this evening's hearing. And if we're ready for, okay, Ms. Seltzer, you're on.
Better?
She is not.
It has to be on your end.
We definitely have the right picture up on the screen now.
Sure.
Yeah, give us one moment.
What-
Jody,
one
can you
moment.
hear her on your Zoom? Is her sound coming through?
No, it runs through Lori's, the computer won't
Okay.
work.
Got it.
Put Lori's computer
Maybe
next to the microphone.
Microphone, yeah. Can we put her computer next to a mic? Or her headset? That was Dan's idea.
Where's closed caption?
Can you try speaking one more time, Ms. Seltzer?
Is it working now?
Yes,
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 it
it is.
Yay,
Yay.
Time's up.
okay. Hi.
3 minutes is up.
Hi, Adrian Seltzer, Winwood. Hello, Commissioners. I have a question for you. I was checking back on CBG. I can never get the initials right. I've been checked back on how funds have been allocated over the past decade or so. And I was wondering if you've done any analysis on how much it has helped. Has it helped in the area of affordable housing? How many families have been helped? Do we have any analysis on whether what you're doing is actually, I know it sounds good, but is it actually doing anything? Do you have anything on that?
Thank you. Yes, so I think we could, if it's, you could probably come back up. Thank you. Anybody else online?
There is.
No? Okay. Okay. So actually, Emily, if you wanted to come up and address a couple of questions, if you know anything about the natural occurring affordable housing program, how new or novel is that, and is that something recognized by HUD? I think that's an interesting idea.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
It sounds not unlike scattered site housing, probably, and so there isn't any particular kind of affordable housing that HUD does or doesn't recognize or appreciate. It's just a matter of what we can figure out in our township and what we can do. It's certainly something that the Affordable Housing Committee has talked about. The scattered site, not the NOAA. Sounds good though. So I know it's something that has been discussed, but we have a funding issue. We have to decide where to put the funds that we do have and see how many funds are coming in.
Okay, thank you. And then with respect to some of the issues surrounding homelessness in Lower Merion Township, we did receive a note from our superintendent of police today with a bit of an update on that data. And Commissioner Kramer, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you felt comfortable sharing that, this is something near and dear to you, please.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, the recent census, which was done throughout Montgomery County, showed that, yes, there are a maximum of 10 people living on the street in Lower Merion. And I say maximum because the county needs to go and make sure that they didn't count, that nobody was counted twice. But so there are people that are living on the street in Lower Merion, in fact. I mean, I can talk a little bit more about what our action steps are. We're working with the Lower Merion Police Department, who has a lot of interaction with the people that are living on the street, and and Montgomery County Housing and Community Development and Emily's office. We've begun talking about ways that we can help the people that are living on the street. But anybody who has an interest in working on that, just shoot me an email. I'd love to talk with you more.
We'll be sure to connect the two of you after the hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And then if you wanted to address some of the questions raised by Ms. Seltzer about the accountability or the impact of the CDBG grant program and how crucial it is and the success of it through the last decade or two on the township, if you'd like to take a minute or two, and then we can maybe provide Triad's data and analysis that has been provided.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's my belief that the township has been receiving CDBG funding for maybe 40 years, I think, or so. I certainly don't have data going back that far. I've only been here 6 years, but we do have data on the number of households that have been served under the rehab program. We have numbers on the number of home purchase programs we've done. We certainly have an accounting of the curb cuts that have been taken care of, at least for like the last, I can't tell you exactly how far back it goes, but we do have that. We have lists and amounts of money that have been given to all these different public services. We have numbers on the job creation and the facades that have been helped. I'm trying to think of what else, and other rehab projects that we've done around for different organizations and even within, for township buildings, township-owned buildings. So that can be provided.
Thank you. And I would just add too, as a total support and FYI, that because of the nature of federal programs like this one where we're a pass-through for federal funding, the reporting requirements that Emily must report back to HUD on are significant. And without the data and anything showing any type of contribution into the township and the success of programs, it is measured. So the question is, are we distributing it in the way we need to? So we will discuss this as a committee, and we'll push out some information that may be more available to the public as they have requested. So, okay, thank you. And then I think I'll just go around the room for questions of the commissioners. So, anybody on my left have any comments, questions? I don't want to rush anybody either. Yes, Commissioner Grimes.
Thank you. I don't have a question, but more a comment. And I don't want to take the time for this tonight, but I think it would be helpful to have an update on how we provide services to the homeless community in this township, whether the police are the primary contact in that, or whether there are other agencies, either with the township or the county, that are providing those services. So maybe at a future meeting, that's something that can be just discussed briefly as part of maybe an update.
Sure, thank you. Yes, great idea. Going around. Yes, Commissioner Zeloff.
Thanks, Commissioner O'Neill. Just a couple of comments. I love the term naturally occurring affordable housing. It's not a program, but it's a theory, a concept. Seems to me that the residential rehab program, which receives a lot of funding from CDBG here in Lower Merion, I think the bulk of our funding, or a majority of our funding, goes to the residential rehab program, and it's been very successful for many years because we have an existing housing stock, much of which is in the affordable category, and this federal money enables owner-occupants of that housing stock to improve and maintain their homes. And so the residential rehab program funding enhances affordable housing, and maybe it's not naturally occurring, but it enhances its occurrence. And so it's been a big successful part of the program, and I'm sure the data will demonstrate that. That was asked about. And then I'd also like to welcome Anthony Johnson to our community. He's been here for just a short time as the executive director of Eldernet, and does not come from this community, but he's gotten up to speed very quickly and has been very, very communicative with many. And welcome. Look forward to working with you some more. Thank you.
Thank you. To my right, any colleagues have questions or issues to raise during the hearing? No? Okay. Well, thank you. That closes the hearing. We will be communicating in the next couple of weeks, and then we will meet again in April about the second hearing to see where we've come. So thank you, and that concludes the work of the Grants Committee.
Hey, thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. We are fortunate the federal government gives us $1 million of federal money to disperse on things that are important locally. Yeah. And thank you for the leadership on this committee.
Thank you.
With that, we turn to the Building and Planning Committee, and I recognize its chair, Commissioner Grimes.
Thank you, President Sinai. So we have 6 items on the stated agenda tonight. Let me say right off that item number 6, the municipal boundary redelineation with Narberth Borough has been tabled. And item number 5, I am going to take first because I am going to make a motion to postpone that item. And if the motion is granted, we will not discuss that item tonight. If it's denied, we'll take it in the ordinary course. So let's start with item number 5, which is the authorization to advertise a proposed ordinance for Chapter 180, A1 and 180 Historic Resource Inventory for 4 lots on Monk Road. I am going to make a motion to postpone till March 8th, which I'm told is the next date of our scheduled Building and Planning Committee. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, thank you, Vice President Gavin. Sorry. You look particularly enthused with this second. So, so the nature, these are descriptions of the newly subdivided parcels at the estate that used to be at 1543 Monk Road, and the postponement is because there's general, I felt, and also the Planning Commission, some members of the Planning Commission felt that we needed to augment the descriptions of the historic nature of the various parcels a little more for our inventory, which is what this item is about. So, are there any commissioner, it's a motion to postpone, so I don't know that we take any do we take questions or comments on this?
Well, you have it to a date certain. And
Yes,
when
March
you do
8th.
have it to a date certain, you can have discussion on it, so.
So we do, so there's no discussion.
No, reverse, there would be.
Oh, we'll take
Okay, so-
discussion.
okay.
Any questions or?
Well, I note that there's some people from, in the audience, or at least I believe, from the Monk Road area, they're in agreement with this?
Well, we can take public comment, ask their comments.
Well, I don't know, we need public comment, I just didn't know that the property owner understands that, this was a request. I don't know
I am
if-
not aware if staff has told the property owner. I did not tell the property owner.
We're about to find out.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see you come in.
Good evening. I've spoken with the applicant's attorney, with the property owner's attorney. There's no issues with the table.
Fine,
Thank you.
thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Commissioner Brown.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this matter? Seeing none, is there anyone online on this? Okay, no, so we'll call the vote. All those in favor of postponement till March 8th, raise your hand signifying aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so that item is postponed. We'll now move to item number 1 on the agenda, which is the waiver of the Township Code. And I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a waiver of Township Code Section 111-4.2 as requested by the applicant Ardmore Initiative to permit patrons to possess open containers with alcoholic beverages and serve alcoholic beverages in public rights-of-way within a regulated area in Shafla Plaza on May 13, 2022. It says 2022. I'm assuming 2023. Someone had an open container when they made this up. Between the hours of 12:30 and 4 o'clock, subject to Ardmore Initiative providing the required insurance certificate documenting adequate coverage is required under the Township Event Permit. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Courtney. Ms. Dirks, my question with you would just be to confirm that May 13, 2023 is the correct date?
Yes, sorry, I'm slow to come up to speed in this year, yes.
Oh, no, not at all. So, thank you. So, while Jillian is up here, I'm told she's our expert on open containers. So if anyone has any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would like to offer public comment on this? Seeing none, anyone online? Okay, so we have the motion. We will call a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand signifying aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Thank you very much. The next one is the approval of certificates of appropriateness on page 6 of your agendas. Item B has been tabled by HARB with the agreement of the applicant, so we have A and C. Are there commissioners, actually, since there are only 2, we'll take them separately. So the first one, I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a certificate of appropriateness as recommended by the HARB at their meeting on February 7, 2023 for 953 Youngsford Road, the Old Guardhouse, Gladwyne Historic District 23-01. Greg, did you want to say, is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Zella. Did you want to say anything about this before we take any questions, or do you just want to go right into questions?
Well, I have some images that I can go through if that would be appropriate on this
That's great.
application.
Let me just say for commissioners, I am guessing that the applicant is here on this.
Correct.
Because I see the applicant's people here, so there will also be an opportunity to ask something of the applicant. So go right ahead.
Okay, there are 2 parts to this application. One is to construct a 3-foot addition to the kitchen, and also to create a new exterior garden and dining area at the rear of the restaurant. So first, the kitchen addition would be constructed in this area with the yellow wire frame. It would extend the interior kitchen area for dishwashing and also for, I think, mop storage is the term that was used. This is the elevation of what that area would look like when constructed. The exterior would be an AZEC board and batten pattern, and with some new windows and a door. As for the new outdoor dining area, this is the current rear of the building where the new pergola is proposed. This is a 3D rendering provided to us today showing in 3 dimensions the new structure as it would appear. Here it is from above. From inside, kind of an interior section elevation view. And from the road at the bottom, showing the fence that's currently there, and I would just kind of poke above that just a little bit. So this is the current view from Writers Mill Road, and a rendering showing in 3D how that would appear once it was constructed. Now there's a plan of the current site, as well as some other plans showing, for one thing, maneuverability of automobiles, which I believe the applicant has worked out, and I don't believe there's any loss in parking spaces, and I know that was a concern. They would be here to address that if there are any questions, but I'd be happy to address any HARB-related questions in the meantime.
Okay. Commissioner Bernhardt.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that presentation. And I know that this is, not the time, the plan itself that we're approving. It's, through the HARB. But can you go back? It's slide number 8. You had it. Go back. It's the sketch of the parking there, right?
This one.
So the concern that many have is those parking spots that are on the top right of what you're looking at. And I actually physically went out there myself. They're going to be compromised. It's going to be very hard to get in and out of those spaces. And my assumption, 100% assumption, is that currently those spaces are probably used for staff. I don't know if anybody knows that one way or the other, because otherwise people aren't going to, really want to be out there and cars coming in and out. And if you go back to, go back to drawing number 6.
Yeah, unfortunately I don't have numbers, so you can
go
stop
back
me
to,
when you
yeah.
get...
Keep going. Stop there.
Okay.
Now, that's where it's going to, be placed. In its current condition, one would say, boy, I'm not eating outside there under, any circumstance. And the parking spots I'm referring to are out of the picture just barely to the right. So my concern, or I should say the neighbor's concern, is are those spots really going to be compromised to the extent that they're unusable? Because, and I'm not sure if you or Chris can answer this, it's my understanding they're already short 5 spaces from what they should be having. And while we don't lose any spaces, theoretically, unless these 3 are compromised, that's a concern that the neighborhood has.
We looked at this very closely as well. When this first came in, Greg is looking at it from a historic standpoint and going through HARB and the architecture. It also requires a zoning permit. So we sat with the zoning officer and we looked at this. And we asked that same question, how are these spaces used? There is a parking requirement for this use, and there's a parking requirement for staff. It operationally makes sense to have these be staff vehicles there. This isn't a place that the public wouldn't want to take it out. We asked for that supplemental information for the turning movements that Greg had included in the presentation, which shows that you can get in and you can get out. You don't want to be going in and out a lot, but if you're going in before the shift and leaving at the end of the shift, it's there. We have similar situations in some other tight lots around the township, some of these old buildings that we have. If it's for staff, we think it works. If it was for the public, I think we'd have an issue.
Yeah. So, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, the information I received was that currently they're short 5 spaces. Now we're adding additional patrons, and I don't know if that would require us to be adding additional spots. And we have this situation where if you go back to those real-life pictures, you see Writers Mill Road, cars are there, and they're there all the time. You know, people hunting for parking.
So
Not
this
that I'm a
is, this is
patron
an
of the
interesting
place, but I
situation,
see
and
it.
you're asking all the great
Yeah.
questions. What is being constructed is outdoor seating. There is no additional parking required for outdoor seating. We even tried to encourage it. It's one of the things to help revitalize our commercial areas. When you have outdoor seating on Lancaster Avenue, or you have outdoor seating in Bryn Mawr, to get those extra couple tables, this is technically outdoor seating, and outdoor seating does not have an additional parking requirement. If this was undercover and in a building, you're absolutely correct. That additional square footage or additional tables would require additional parking, and they wouldn't be able to build this. So what we are doing in the zoning permit is to make sure that this has to remain open to the open. It can't all of a sudden morph into something that starts off as outdoor dining, it has a canopy over it, you bring out heat lamps, and it's really, it's just creating space while it needs to remain seasonal. And that was something that we're including into the zoning permit.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'll leave aside comment on whether our code may be remiss in the way it treats outdoor dining for a moment. But can you answer my earlier question as to whether at present they're short 5 of the required spaces?
I don't have that exactly, but my perception is that there are a few spaces shy of the code requirement, just because this is an older property, it's developed over time. I wouldn't be surprised if the number's 5.
Okay. All right, thank you all very much. Greg, sorry for putting you on the spot.
Not at all.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner.
Sure. Commissioner O'Neill.
Oh, thank you. I just have a question about the outdoor dining component to this, because it seems to me that this is almost identical to what they have at, say, Lola's Garden and other places, which we just approved maybe a year and a half ago, without any changes or material increases or decreases to parking for Suburban Square. This is completely the same, isn't it?
No, we didn't. Lola's Garden, we didn't treat as outdoor dining, because Lola's Garden actually has a roof, and it's real all season, for the most part. I think, I don't know. I haven't been over there. I don't know if it's open in February, but it's open at least 9 months out of the year with heat lamps, and there's a real desire for this. This is really intended to be something much like if you were dining on Lancaster Avenue in Rosemont or Bryn Mawr, that if it's cold, you're not going to go outside and eat right in front of a sushi restaurant or a little Italian restaurant.
Great. And then related to that, in the use of the 5 spaces, which we may or may not be short of anyway, could they even get 5 additional spaces in that? There's no way.
No, they wouldn't be
Yeah,
able to have that
so,
additional
okay.
space. If it was just a building expansion, they wouldn't be able to do it
Right.
because they wouldn't meet their parking requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Great, sure. Vice President Gabbard.
Thank you. Couple of questions, Greg. From a historical standpoint, does it matter? Is this a contributing resource? Does this play a part at all? I mean, it looks lovely, but it doesn't look anything like the rest of the building. Does that matter?
Yeah, so so the building, the property is contributing to the Gladwyne Historic District. That's the historic crossroads of Gladwyne right there. So it really is one of the most important historic resources in the district. When building a new element onto the property, if it's whether it's connected to the building or not, there are a couple of things that the HARB or the Historical Commission looks at. Whether the building or the new element can easily be removed in the future without any negative impact on the historic structure. Its overall architectural, not necessarily compatibility, but whether or not it detracts from the architecture of the existing building. They determined that it really doesn't have, it wouldn't have a negative impact, and it's something that easily could be removed in the future should the restaurant's function change at some point in the future.
Okay. So can you go back to that slide with the part where showing the cars going into those spots? Because I have the same concerns as Commissioner Bernheim. First of all, those overlap for the two spots. So I'm looking at that back spot, and it looks like you kind of have to nick the corner of the prior car to get into that last spot. And I know this might not be appropriate for here, but a question from a process standpoint, maybe you can answer it, maybe this is a question for Chris or somebody else. I don't believe that those two spots are really spots. And I've raised this with other applications before with really, 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 really tight parking. I'm not buying this. Is that, if I believe you're actually getting rid of at least one spot, if not two, do I not support this? Do I wait until it comes up, outside of HARB, or at what point do we address that issue?
Well, the application before you is for the certificate of appropriateness for the architecture, for the design of this new structure, the two portions of the building that would be added on. My belief is that it's part of another process to determine whether this would be a taking of spaces, that sort of thing.
The parking is really part of the zoning permit. Part of the new code requires all of these uses to have a zoning permit. That would be a separate review by the zoning officer and planning staff.
So it doesn't come back, this is not coming back
It's
before.
administrative.
So if we
That's
believe
something
that.
I've looked at it with the zoning officer. I don't believe he's made an informal determination, but he hasn't made a formal determination of that.
But
But
if
zoning permit I don't believe has been issued.
If we believe that this design is losing a couple of parking spaces, and we believe it's important not to lose a couple of parking spaces, then we should not support this application here. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
It's a little out of your purview, because what's before you is the architecture, not this. I will have a separate conversation with the zoning officer about the parking. Will probably involve, I think you're making a recommendation, you should probably have the township engineer look at this to confirm that. And if it doesn't work for that, we can issue the permit, even if the architecture works.
Okay.
Yeah, I would also add that all HARB applications or certificates of appropriateness would be approved subject to zoning compliance. So if, for example, a sign comes in, HARB might approve it, but zoning, we try to solve these problems ahead of time, but it also has to comply with zoning in order for the permit to be issued in the end.
And if this loses one of the 5 parking spots, will the zoning permit be denied?
Yes.
Okay.
As I'm shaking my head, yes, because they cannot increase their nonconformity through this process. They
Okay.
need to maintain that, they need to or have more parking.
I mean, because there are opportunities to reshape the outdoor seating spot. You cut off that corner, you maybe get rid of one table, and now you can fit cars in there.
And
There are
that's
ways
what we
to
try to do, and if it required a modification to what you're seeing tonight, they would have to come back again.
I will really hope that the zoning officer takes a good look at this, whether they decide it fits or not, but at least taking a serious look
Well,
at it.
we don't, at this level, most of the time, we don't need to elevate this to the township engineer, but I think in the case of this one, since it's drawn so much attention, we'll bring the township engineer in.
Okay, thank you very much.
Excuse me, anyone else? Any other commissioners? So let me just say one additional thing on this application. And this was not directly asked. This property is a Class 1 historic resource. So in addition to the consideration by the HARB, Class 1 resources are supposed to go through the Historical Commission. And I understand from conversation, well, you'll have your opportunity to respond. I had a conversation with staff, obviously not identified people that they could say, on this, and I was told there is a ambiguity in our code. But I am not prepared to vote against this for that reason, although I think it is a problem that this was not, the Historic Commission looks at different things than the HARB, because they look at the building in and of itself and whether the alterations are faithful, much like when we looked at the Henry Foundation building about 2 months ago, and that shed that was not connected, and we said, how is it in the context? So I am pointing that out for my colleagues, and Greg, you can respond to that, but unless it's not a Class 1 historic resource, which is under the jurisdiction of the Historical Commission, I believe it should have gone there.
Well, with the exception of one historic district, all of the contributing resources within the other 6 historic districts that HARB has purview over are listed in the historic resource inventory as Class 1 resources. So the Historical Commission reviews properties that are outside of districts. HARB reviews all of the properties within those 7 historic districts.
So you're saying that when a historic resource is in a historic district, it doesn't go to the Historical Commission?
Not if it goes to HARB.
Okay, I'd be interested after this to finding the citation in our law. As I say, I'm not prepared to hold this application up for this issue, but I don't believe that.
Right.
I respectfully would disagree with you. And I don't want to dwell on that unless other commissioners do, but I believe it's a problem. It's an issue with the consideration of this application. So is there anyone else before we go to public comment? Is there any public comment on this matter? Nobody. There's nobody online. So unless there's something else, we will take a vote on this motion. All those in favor of granting the certificate, recommending the certificate of appropriateness, please raise your hand signifying aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I see 9. Opposed? I see 1 opposition, and I'm going 2 opposed. Oh, you're abstaining? There are 2 abstentions, so 3 abstentions. So the motion carries. Thank you. So the next one on the agenda, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. Who abstained?
3 of us.
Oh, okay. I missed your.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is 47 East Lancaster Avenue, their Ardmore Commercial Historic District. Greg, do you want to say something quick about this one?
I'd be happy to, mainly because there has been a change in this plan since HARB met just recently. Sheridan? Okay. So this is, so this property is just down the block from us, here on Lancaster Avenue. The former Hunan restaurants. It has a new owner, will receive a new business. The application was an approval to alter the storefront, including the installation of new signage and storefront details. HARB recommended that a subcommittee review changes to the design, including moving the location of the proposed signage above where it had been originally proposed. And this is the facade when it was brand new in the 1940s. This is the proposal for the new signage on the facade. During the meeting, amongst discussions with the applicant, it was decided that the signage would best be placed above where it's proposed here. So the arrow is showing where it would be newly proposed, and here it is in a photo illustration. And again, HARB recommended approval with the subcommittee to review installation details so that they can be sure that the location where the sign would be installed would not have a negative impact on the historic integrity of the building.
Thanks. Any questions, comments? Commissioner McComb?
Thank you, Commissioner Gross. Greg, I'm just trying to understand, the sign would be moved to where the end of that arrow is?
Correct, just a couple feet above where it's shown in that drawing.
And how will that be affixed to the structure?
So the windows, the glazing has aluminum frame in the center mullions, both vertical and horizontal. The sign, we believe, can be attached directly to those. They're pretty substantial. It's a pretty substantial framework, and the electrical conduit would also be able to pass through that, we believe.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Anyone else? Oh, Commissioner Stevenson, please.
Help me understand, why would we move a sign up to block the window frame issue? I mean, I used to go there, and the view is an excellent view, and now it's going to be blocked by a sign. I guess I don't understand that.
So the proposed location of the signs would have obscured these decorative marble panels. That was HARB's main concern. Not just blocking them visually, but the method of attachment to them would have damaged them substantially. Moving them up does block the windows, but actually the second floor is being removed from the front of the building. So that will be an open area going up 2 stories now in that space. So it will, there will be still significant glazing, so significant sunlight can still come through into the retail area.
And the previous sign, however, was where?
This Hunan sign was located right above the entrance doors, just a group of letters on the canopy to roof.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, so I'm going to put a motion on the table. I'm going to move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a certificate of appropriateness for 47 East Lancaster Avenue, the Ardmore Commercial Historic District number 23-3. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner McComb. Anything further from anyone up here? Seeing none. Any public comment on this? Go ahead, Ms. Gillen.
I just quickly want to say, I know the HARB's purview on this has to do with the detailing on the building. I felt that moving that sign up really takes away from the walkability and the viability of that business, because really, the further up you go, the further away you need to be to see the sign. You could put stuff on the glass, the vinyl, sorts of things, but it just feels like there's another aspect of what this design included, visibility from the sidewalk, that is not really a historic issue.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Anyone online for this? Nope. Okay. Anything further? We'll call the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand signifying aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Any abstentions? Seeing none. Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Greg. Next is the Historic Commission applications beginning on page 18 of the amended packet, the revised packet. There are 4 items here. I'm going to see if anyone wants to take any of these separately. If otherwise, we will do one motion for them. Anyone want separate consideration of any of these? Okay, so I'm going to move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the following applications as recommended by the Historical Commission at their meeting held on January 23, 2023. 215 Tower Lane, Penn Valley, Class 2, 2023-R-1. 938 Summit Road, Penn Valley, Class 2, 2023-R-2. 1159 Youngsford Road, Gladwyne, Class 2, 2023-R-4. 43 Writers Mill Road, Gladwyne, Class 1, 2023-R-5. 128 Old Lancaster Road, Temple, Marion Station, Temple out of Israel, Class 2, 2023-R-3. And 444 North Highland Avenue, Marion Station, Class 2, 2023-R-6. Is there a second? Thank you, Vice President Gavin. Any discussion from any commissioners? Seeing none, is there any public comment on any of these items, any of the 6? Seeing none, we will call anything on anyone online? No. Okay. We'll call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And President Sinai, I'm just looking. I believe, yes, that concludes the, we're finished, aren't we? What's that? Number 4. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just seeing HARB. I thought we already did that. Sorry. Page 39 of our revised packets. This is concerns the design guidelines for historic resources and historic districts. Greg, are you giving us a little presentation on this?
Yes, indeed. Thanks very much, Commissioner Grimes. This is a project that's we've been working on for a long time, and we're very happy to present it to you this evening. Design guidelines. There we go. Design guidelines are kind of among the standard documents that are used by municipalities throughout the country that have historic ordinances, historic preservation boards and commissions like ours. And according to the state of Pennsylvania, they contain written recommendations, approaches, and or policies about repairs, improvements, and alterations to existing buildings, as well as new construction. They basically guide both the advisory boards as well as the applicants and their architects as to what the proper procedures are and the reasoning for making recommendations for alterations to historically designated properties. Lower Merion has been a certified local government, or CLG, with the state of Pennsylvania since 1992, and through that program we've been awarded multiple grants that have resulted in invaluable consultant services, including surveys and reports that have guided our historic preservation policy for decades. The State Historic Preservation Office updated their requirements for CLGs a couple of years ago, and among the requirements is that municipalities must adopt design guidelines that illustrate how the review standards and criteria in the ordinance should be applied to designated properties. And so that's what we sought to do with this, but we did have precedent. We did have guidelines that were created by the HARB and guided by our HARB that were created back in 1996, which predates the formation of the Historical Commission and the Historic Resource Inventory by 4 years. So they really were due for an update. The guidelines from that time really focused on resources within the historic district, how HARB would review applications, and nothing at all about how the Historical Commission would do the same. So we sought to remedy that, and the resulting document is a very comprehensive summary of how applications should be reviewed and many other things. Just very briefly go through each of the sections. First, an introduction to the township and the historic resources found here. Chapter 2 is an historical overview of the township, which gives a lot of great background. The design review process is described thoroughly in Chapter 3. Chapter 4 describes qualities of traditional architecture. So these beginning chapters are really background information that could aid people in their understanding of how our process works and how our advisory boards come to their decisions. Starting with Chapter 5, the guidelines begin. First with the guidelines for preserving historic buildings. Chapter 6 is guidelines for new buildings and additions to historically designated resources. Chapter 7 is guidelines for sustainability in historic context, and this is an issue that is getting a lot more importance in the community. And there's a saying, the most sustainable building is one that already exists, and we stand by that, and we worked closely with the sustainability manager to come up with appropriate wording and to know some new terms that might not have been included in our previous version. Chapter 8 is guidelines for preserving historic streetscapes and landscapes, so commercial corridors like downtown Ardmore, for instance. And so a series of meetings took place over the past couple of years, actually, to review this document for the Historical Commission and HARB to provide comments and suggestions. And after several drafts, in October of last year, a joint group of the HARB and the HC recommended the acceptance of the current version of the proposed design guidelines, dated actually November. They asked for several minor updates, which were made, and so the current version is dated November. And the way it's worded, the way this motion was worded, recommended the acceptance of the document because it won't be adopted as part of the township code. It won't be an appendix to the code. It will be a supporting document. It will be an official township document, but it won't have rules in it. It will be just guidelines. They recommended also the following changes. First of all, or additions rather. First of all, the creation of a web interface where the guidelines would be shared with the community widely and to be split up into individual sections, focusing on individual topics, that might pertain to the most common applications that come before the HARB and the HC. And they assigned a subcommittee of both groups to be actively involved with that process. And we're looking forward to getting that process started. Secondly, the undertaking of a public outreach campaign to notify owners of historic resources and the public in general of the release of the final version of the document in a cost-effective way. So a couple of expansions on that. So first of all, next steps. This is how our comprehensive plan webpage looks currently on the township website, and we're picturing something similar. So it's not just one link to one big 100-page document. The comprehensive plan was split up into sections or chapters, but what we're thinking of doing is a little bit different. So there are many, many sections in the table of contents, and actually in the big PDF, each of these sections is a link to that portion, that page in the document. But what we want to do is to combine portions of different sections. So for example, if windows are referenced in one section and they're also referenced in the sustainability section, we want to combine those into a single user-friendly sheet summarizing all of the pertinent information about that subject. On the right on the screen here is an example of a handout that we created to supplement the zoning code rewrite. And this is kind of the format that we're thinking of using, a combination of words and graphics laid out in a way that's very easy to follow. Some of the topics that we're considering making these about would be windows and doors, roofing, additions, new construction in historic districts, new construction on historic resource parcels, two different things with some subtle differences, and solar, which is becoming a very important issue that we're seeing more of. And in terms of public outreach, we want to begin this once those topic summary documents are created. And we're thinking of promotion in the township newsletter and social media, distribution of sections or handouts to prospective applicants to the HARB and HC. Once they reach out to us on the staff level and have questions about what it means to replace an element or to build in addition onto a residence, we want to be able to provide them with that kind of documentation, maybe even before they get the design process started. And also civic association outreach. So these are just a few of the ideas that we've had to get it out there. But we are really looking forward to having this be an official document. And our consultants who created the document are here. If there are any questions about design guidelines in general, they've created them for many communities in this part of the country. And be glad to answer your questions too.
Thank you, Greg. All right, Commissioner questions, comments? President Sinai, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. And Greg, thank you for that presentation. I read this. It's terrific. It's not just a list of rules, right? It has a lot of history and context and explanation for why the recommendations are what they are. And as a document, it's really very impressive. I think it's going to be very helpful. It's also very long. And as thorough documents are. And so I was really happy to see that the website sounds like it will have, if that's like the user manual that comes like in the box that's like the size of a novel, like the quick start guide, I think is like going to be really helpful. I like that you're organizing it by like function of what people are going to try and accomplish. It'd be really good to have here are the little steps. You can always hyperlink to more explanation for each of those things. I think the easier that we can make the entry into this for people, the more useful it's going to be. So that next step, I think, is going to be really important to really make the most use of this. And then the second is, I think this is really not just for people who are, have actually designated historic resources that they're working with. I think there's a lot of people in this township who have properties that, come from one vintage or another, and they're looking to do the renovations or whatever they're going to do with something that's compatible or consistent with the era of their building or their house. The more that we can tell everyone else in the township about this resource, I think people will find it very helpful. I certainly did. Anyway, thank you for this, and thanks for the consultants.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think a large percentage of homes in the township date from before 1950 probably, so it's a good suggestion to promote this not just to owners of resources, but to anyone who'd be interested in restoring their house in the appropriate way.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Zelloff?
Thanks, Commissioner Grimes. And Greg, thanks for this presentation and bringing this forward. And it's, I think these guidelines are much needed. We've, from time to time, heard from property owners, particularly those in historic districts, about the burden of having a property in those districts and the uncertainty, and this should help provide some certainty and some information that they don't have to pay for, that will be easily available, for those who really want to take the time. And the easy to use part, President Sinai, hit the nail on the head with that. It's got to be easy to use, and your web approach sounds like the right way. So in terms of informing people, the most important audience to inform, seems to me, are those who own such properties. And they shouldn't have to rely on civics or newsletters. We don't have everybody's email. So it seems to me that U.S. mail letters to those property owners saying, here's what we have to help you going forward, and here's how to use it, and here's when it'll be online, should be done. So I think that we need to make sure that all property owners in HARB districts and separately are historically designated and subject to HC review should get letters. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown.
Sure. Commissioner McComb?
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I agree with what's been said, particularly by President Sinai. I think this is going to be a wonderful tool, particularly for residents who are starting the process. It helps to demystify, and I think most of the problems that we end up seeing are sort of a mismatch in terms of understandings and expectations as to what is doable and permissible and what is not. Sometimes the resident gets kind of down the road with something and it turns out it's not acceptable, and that leads to issues. So, and I also agree that the outreach is important, so whatever can be done in a practicable way, and also that it's user-friendly. But I think the rollout is great. I think it's not just for people in historic homes or historic districts, but I think it helps generate some interest in the historic value of lots of what we have in the township, and it sort of raises that level of understanding and appreciation for it. So it's a great idea. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevenson?
Thank you. I would echo that this is a great document for us to move forward with. My question is, and suggestion is, it has come up before us before about there are certain folks who live in certain areas who either, for whatever reason, don't have the memory or the understanding about the significance of them living in historical districts or homes, and it's been requested that something from the township, like postcards reminding them to that effect. I would hope that this is something that we can put back on the table. And if not, I know that once before it was about budgeting, and if it is a budget issue, I would be glad to sponsor that in the next budget piece about how we can move that forward. I will not look at my colleague, Mr. Zelloff, about the budgeting piece. Thank you.
I think I heard my name.
I said money.
Does that mean to be a co-sponsor?
All right. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on this matter? Oh, go ahead.
already are consultants to the HARB and for the HC, would be Bill Friends and Carol Quigley. They know this township inside and out, and I wouldn't have trusted the creation of this document to, to really anyone else. Cheers to the township for choosing such a great group of consultants. And then also, of course, to the HARB, to the HC, I was here for discussions, very robust discussions regarding the creation of the documents. What you're seeing here in front of you is not how this document started, so there's a lot of public input, a lot of back and forth about what would make the document better, including a number of the sort of the online tools that help to make it easier to navigate. So, for us, it really hits the mark on so many levels. It's really an excellent overview of the development of the township and its historic architecture, the built environment, and it provides some really great illustrations through both pictures and drawings of the kind of architecture that predominates in this township and that people are used to seeing, that they associate with this township. It also provides, as several of the commissioners have already noted, it's really an excellent document to help applicants who come before the HC and the HARB understand what appropriate interventions are when we're dealing with historic resources. And Commissioner Selloff noted, it's something that we really do owe to the applicants who come before these two commissions. Not everybody understands what the HARB and the HC are looking for. So to have these kinds of documents and these illustrations is incredibly helpful. And also, I think, as Commissioner McComb noted and Commissioner Sinai, to have these guidelines available to people who do not live in historic district. Because Greg or somebody noted, the vast percentage of older homes in our township are not listed. And some of them are really, even if they don't come into the review of the HC and HARB, their owners are really interested in maintaining them as historic resources because they are special to them. So for those many reasons, and also because I think the document provides applicants with a really sound understanding of the review process, it's all in one place. So it's a go-to document where you look and see, how does it go when I'm putting an application for the HARB or the HC? What can I expect? So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Laura Gill in Haverford. Thank you, Commissioner Zelloff and Commissioner Stevenson, and all of you who did read the document. I find this to be a very awkward document, and I am disappointed that it was crafted in an awkward manner. Staff did commit years ago to public workshops, but those never happened, and input from even from members of the HARB and the HC seemed to be noted but not usually considered. There were 3 joint meetings of the HARB and HC that I know of, and that at the last one in October, it was primarily to provide an update on the most recent minor changes and to get concurrence to send the document to you tonight. Although I will credit our sustainability manager for making some very thoughtful comments and for setting a new positive standard for sort of interaction among departments. In various discussions, mostly outside the joint meeting, some of us spoke out against the density of the document and the basic unreadability and the many pages devoted to the history of architecture in Lower Merion, which some of us still think should be pushed to the back as an appendix for those who might be most interested. If you want to encourage us to embrace historic preservation, invite us in. Don't hit us over the head with us and then smack us around later with architectural taxonomy. This is a very dense and heavy document. The comprehensive plan recommendation to improve the overall process by providing clearly written and illustrated design guidelines should have been the clear objective, but it really never was. I will also note that while staff quotes from the principles and standards for design guidelines in Pennsylvania communities, the actual principles and standards were never referenced during joint meetings, nor are they really reflected in this product. And the one I want to call out to you is the principle that says that the design guidelines should be developed through a public process that involves residents, property owners, community stakeholders, and other interested parties. Kathleen and I showed up to the meetings, but do you think many other people did? No. because they weren't invited in. There was no advertisement. It was just announced as an agenda item. These draft guidelines were championed primarily by the historic preservation contractor, and efforts toward any sense of ownership by Lower Merion residents were mostly dismissed. The consultant's primary focus, and I heard her say this, was on creating a document that would back up the HC and the HARB in their recommendations, and, by the way, their own recommendations, and inform them. To their credit, the HC and the HARB, at their meeting in October, requested specifically the creation of the website interface and a public outreach campaign. After more than 4 years of awkward fits and starts, this is what we get, but I would ask you to be very, very clear in what you're asking staff to do and those two advisory bodies. As described in the issue briefing, staff basically plan to post the PDF with the table of contents as navigation. What I've heard this evening sounds great. I would ask you to hold staff accountable for that kind of a web interface that is very, very usable. I think you need to provide staff clear guidance on what you expect to see and when you expect to see it. We need a little bit more, and the process, for those of us who need to apply, needs to be up front and center. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillen. Is there anyone else with public comment? Anybody online? Okay. Anything further from commissioners? Did I make a motion on this? I don't believe that I did, so I will do that now. I will recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to use the design guidelines for historic resources and historic districts dated November 2022 as drafted to describe the best practices for performing work on historically designated properties. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner McComb. Anything further? We'll call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. And now, President Sinai, that concludes business of the Building and Planning Committee.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Grimes. It was an important element to get through.
Yes,
I'm glad we got our way through that. And I guess that's it for the tonight's meeting of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. We are adjourned.
Go Bert, yeah? Yeah, there's a little Super Bowl going on Sunday, I think.
Somebody can tell Todd.